Hey friends, and welcome back to another episode of Built by Us, a video series built of, by, and for the people. If you've heard of Built by Us before, that's because this spawned from our amazing podcast, so be sure to tune into past episodes anywhere that you listen to podcasts on Apple or Spotify or wherever. Today, we're talking about voting after disaster. In North Carolina, about a week and a half ago, Hurricane Helene devastated Western North Carolina, wiping out complete towns, ruining homes and families and communities that have been established for decades and generations. And a lot of counties and places are currently left without water, electricity, infrastructure in general, and a lot of community and mutual aid programs are coming in to help and support, including our friends at Beloved Asheville, the Pansy Collective, the Blue Ridge Public Radio. There are a lot of great organizations doing work out there. One of the things that we're doing here at Democracy NC is making sure that if and when you have a moment to say, how the hell am I going to vote in this election, that we've got those answers for you. We're here and ready to make sure you can access the ballot. So I've got an incredible guest today, Katelin Kaiser, who's our policy director, has extensive voting rights litigation experience challenging discriminatory voter ID laws in North Carolina to fighting for fair maps in Florida and Texas. She graduated with honors from law school from North Carolina Central University, go Eagles, and is dedicated to fighting for accountable, transparent, and a participatory multiracial democracy. Hey, Katelin.
Hi, Giselle.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about voting after disaster. And we would love to be able to tell our viewers today, what are we doing to support voters that have been affected by the hurricane?
Yeah, so right now a lot is actually happening. So immediately after Hurricane Helene came through Western North Carolina, our State Board of Elections immediately started to hold emergency meetings to start thinking about what needs to be done now. And so one of the things at the offset was knowing that many of these counties in Western North Carolina did not have internet, cell service, power. Yeah. And so our State Board of Elections met in an emergency meeting and discussed this in public so that anyone who wanted to learn more or provide folks in the West with information could do so. And so the State Board of Elections first met to discuss how to provide counties with flexibility on voting by mail meetings. And so on October 1st, by law, all counties in North Carolina are required to start to review and process mail-in ballots that are received at the County Board of Elections.
Yeah.
And so we knew that those counties that were impacted were already receiving mail-in ballots. And so the first thing that our State Board of Elections did was give flexibility to those counties to delay that process and to allow them to restart when it was going to be best for them, as we know that they needed to have that many staff were also impacted in dealing with personal issues from the hurricane, whether it was housing, their families being displaced, or needing to leave the state to find more secure shelter. And so that was one of the first things that our State Board of Elections did. Another step that our State Board of Elections took was meeting this Monday. And
this past Monday was October 7th.
Thank you. This Monday, October 7th, and met and used its emergency powers to implement various flexibilities to allow the county boards of elections to serve voters where they are at right now.
That's great.
One of the main things that the county board of elections did was provide flexibility for how voters can request a mail-in ballot.
Okay.
And so voters can have up till November 4th to actually go to the County Board of Elections office and make that request for a mail-in ballot. And importantly, in North Carolina, if a voter cannot make the request themselves because maybe they don't have transportation to leave their home, a near relative can make that request on their behalf.
Yeah.
And so
they're stranded.
Yeah.
And they're waiting for arborists to cut down the many trees that are in front of their road.
Yeah, we know. I know. I saw pictures of roads just being destroyed on main highways, and so we know that movement and being able to move safely is a real problem, and it's going to continue to be impacting voters, as we enter into early voting starting on October 17th. And so voters can ask loved ones to be able to request that ballot, or if a voter is disabled, they can ask any person of their choice. And so it's a more expansive option for a person who is disabled.
Yeah,
so
we saw a lot of care facilities get impacted by the hurricane. Like, I think I saw mutual aid groups going out helping seniors flush their toilets because they literally couldn't flush their toilet or have water to do that. So that, I mean, it's amazing that they can have a person help them get their mailed ballot if they're not able to leave their care facility or home.
Yes, and that is something where we are seeing this impact of our systems. So whether it's water waste management, coming into contact with voting. And so we know right now that, as you said earlier, people right now are thinking about their basic needs. How can I have my basic needs satisfied? And then we know that once people feel in a more comfortable place, that voting will start to come to that top of the mind. And I think that's also really important right now. And when we're thinking about the response to Hurricane Helene, is many of our legislators will be on the ballot. And thinking about what we could have done differently is going to, maybe people might have feelings about that. That we should have, North Carolina as a state should have been in a better place to have a more robust response for people, especially in Western North Carolina. And so that is something where people might be voting for this exact issue, climate crisis, and how North Carolina can have a more inclusive response to disaster relief or disaster.
You make really great points. Voting might not be at the top of the mind. And because the election is so important this year, not just at the top of the ticket, not just the presidential, going all the way down the ballot and checking your school board, your council people, your representatives for waste management, or the North Carolina State Supreme Court. There's a position that's going to be on the ballot for that. So all of those matter and impact the way disaster relief is enacted in your county or what's passed at this General Assembly. I think the North Carolina General Assembly met as well and passed a disaster relief package. Can you tell us a little bit more about, like, you kind of touched on some things, but like maybe 3 highlights of that policy and what that looks like for an everyday person?
So the first major thing that the North Carolina General Assembly did is they appropriated, so gave funds to our State Board of Elections of $5 million. And that is amazing because our State Board of Elections had requested those funds to be able to provide the impacted county boards of elections with emergency response kits, whether or not the ability to hire temporary staff to come in and support, as well as to be able to set up temporary voting sites. So having the equipment and technology to be able to do that, as well as that money can go into, whether it's rental equipment or other sorts of needs that to ensure that the quality of voting and the security of voting continues on, regardless if it's at a temporary site or not. And so that was the first major thing that the General Assembly did in passing House Bill 149.
I know things get dramatically more expensive when disaster hits.
Yes, it does. And our General Assembly has a $1 billion surplus of funds. And so let's use it. Now is the time to be using this money. And so it was really great to, it was encouraging, I should say, for them to be able to give those funds to the state board like that. Another thing that the General Assembly did in this bill was expand the relief to 25 counties. And so when the State Board of Elections met on October 7th, on that Monday.
What are our days right
all
now?
The days all the days are together. When the State Board of Elections met, they made the emergency powers to only 13 counties. And so what the General Assembly did is they expanded that to 25 counties in the Western North Carolina. And so by expanding those powers, now those voters have access to more accessible voting by mail options. They now have an option to get a MAT team, which stands for a multi-partisan team, to come to them. So in a situation where a voter cannot leave their house, a MAT member and a MAT team can come to that person's house and help them vote and
really
take their
helpful.
ballot back to the county boards of elections office.
That's really
So that is an essential service, especially for people who are stuck or who feel concerned about driving or leaving their homes. Another top policy that the General Assembly modified was allowing folks to be able to serve from other counties as poll workers or election officials.
That's awesome.
And so, like me and you, if in all the spare time that we have, can or other people who feel like they have an urge to go to the West. We've heard some organizations who are out there supporting voters say, just wait until we figure out the landscape of this. But for elections, we know again that the people who are running our elections are people from our communities.
Yes.
But we also know that those people are also impacted.
Yeah.
And County Board of Elections, may need extra help to be able to off-shift the people who are typically in those roles. And so if you are registered in Wake County or Orange County, you can volunteer to be an election official in those 25 impacted counties. And to be able to find that out, you can go to the State Board of Elections website, and they will be able to provide you with those lists of 25 counties that are in that region.
That's amazing. All right, take a moment. Make sure you go to the State Board of Elections website and check out where you can be a poll worker in any county that's been affected by Hurricane Helene. It's a really great way to get involved. I know a lot of folks are supporting mutual aid efforts across Western North Carolina, and that's super important. So you have extra time, especially during the early voting period or on election day. Being a poll worker in one of these counties is a great way to get involved. So what if, you talk about different county, right? I'm in a different county, but I haven't been impacted. What if I am from Watauga County and my house is uninhabitable and I had to go to a relative or a friend or a hotel, I have a hotel assistance voucher, and I'm in a different county? What does voting look like for me?
Yeah, so that is going to be a reality of many people. On 888 Our Vote, the North Carolina nonpartisan hotline that Democracy North Carolina manages, we have already received a couple calls from people who are in that exact situation. When you are temporarily displaced in North Carolina, what that means is you still hold your previous residence for voting purposes.
Okay.
And so in your example that you provided, Watauga would still be your permanent residence for voting. But because of the changes that the State Board and the General Assembly have made, you can request, you can drop off a ballot at the other County Board of Elections office. And so what that means is you can, one, request or re-request a mail-in ballot to your temporary address. And then once you receive that mail-in ballot and complete it, you can drop that off at the Wake County Board of Elections office or the Guilford County Board of Elections office. Wherever you are located, you can drop that mail-in ballot off there.
So because we use the language mail and ballot, you don't necessarily have to use the post office to return your mailed ballot. You can courier, in the old school way, courier the ballot from the County Board of Elections back to a County Board of Elections where you're located.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's what's really awesome about mail-in voting is as you said, we use this term mail-in or voting by mail. And one of the nice things about the flexibility about mail-in voting is you can request that ballot at any residence. So even if I'm out of state, I'm living in Florida or temporarily living in Florida right now because that's where my family is located, you can still request that ballot to be at that location. And then if you are actually going to utilize a mail, make sure you have 3 stamps on that mail-in ballot because it costs $1.77.
Okay. Very good hint. Yes.
And but if you're not out of state and you're just in another different county, you can be able to drop that ballot off at any early voting site between October 17th and November 2nd. So that's the early voting period in North Carolina. Or you can be able to drop it off at a County Board of Elections office, as I said before, or the State Board of Elections office, which is located in Raleigh. Another option for voters in the situation where they're displaced And maybe they really don't know if they can go back to their old home. Maybe they're in a situation where I just don't know what I'm going to do.
Their home got wiped away. Literally, this is a reality for folks.
Truly. And they're just in a position right now where I don't know if I'll be able to go back in 6 months. I don't know if I'll be able to go back in a year. And so if you're in a place where you don't know where your residence will be and you're not intending to return home, then you have the option to do same-day registration. And what that will allow you to do is you can, between the period of October 17th and November 2nd, go to a same-day, go to an early voting site in the county that you are currently residing. And if you bring a document with your name and current residential address, and so that can be typically a utility bill, a bank statement, let's see what else, a paycheck, those sorts of like government documents, or more official documents.
FEMA assistance letter?
Yeah, exactly. That would require it. That's a great example, Giselle. You can bring that document and register and vote at the same time. And so that is something just to keep in your mind if you're in that position. Another thing too, while we're talking about preparing to vote and potentially losing possessions or not having possessions on you, is voter photo ID. And this will be the first major election where voters are required to show acceptable voter photo ID. And if you don't have your driver's license on you, if you lost your student ID, if you lost your passport, these are the categories of what's considered to be acceptable voter photo ID in North Carolina. You will have the option to vote with an ID exception form. And for voters who are impacted in those region, whether it's the 25 counties or how Governor Cooper in his emergency
or Rocky Mount, right? So Rocky Mount just went through a ton of devastation with tornadoes, and this is not the first time. Just last week there was a few tornadoes that rolled through Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and they have been getting hit consistently in the past few kind of climate crisis situations. And so go ahead.
These are real. And so and on that ID exception form, there is an option for victim of a natural disaster. And so you can check that box, and that can be used as an exception to the ID, exception to showing photo ID. And so that is just something to keep in mind, and don't prevent yourself from utilizing your political power if you're worried about not having the right documents. I think one important thing just to keep in mind is if folks are trying to make that voting plan, again, you can call or text 888-OUR-VOTE. You can talk to an attorney like myself or other trained
real deal experts, not fake news, real deal experts,
or other trained attorneys who can answer your call and try to figure out a voting plan for you, what's going to work best for you. Another thing, again, is to check the State Board of Elections website. They have a list of all of the county's contact information. You can call your county, even if it is in that impacted region. Our amazing executive director, Karen Burnson-Bell, has continued to be committed that all these counties are open, and so you can call that county and also work with them about what are going to be your voting options.
That's really great. So I heard a few things come from that. If you are displaced, keep any of those like FEMA assistant documents to help you either register to vote in a new county or support any of your voting plans. Keep those on hand. If you show up at a polling location and they're asking for your ID, but you don't have it due to a disaster, make sure you request a ID exception form. Every single polling location has those forms. So make sure if someone tells you, I don't know what that form is, or we don't have those forms, ask somebody else, because those voter ID exception forms are your right, particularly if you don't have an ID due to a disaster or anything else that qualifies. And then if you're voting by mail, you can request that at any county board of elections and return that back to the county board of elections where you're residing in, or an early voting location. And you don't have to do it by mail. You can do it, courier it yourself, request it in the mail, or go to that county board of elections and get it and bring it back. And then you're able to vote if you're not, let's say you're working on election day.
Yeah.
Election day is not a federal holiday, y'all. Like, people be working and it's real. And so voting by mail is not just restricted to those who have been affected by the disaster. It is for everyday working folks. If you're working on election day and you can't get out there, use vote by mail, because that's, or early voting.
Yeah, early voting. I think early voting is really the best option for people. And the reason why early voting is so great is you can fix many issues before you really potentially lose the opportunity to make sure that you have your vote counted.
Yeah.
And so if you haven't voted in a while, maybe, the climate crisis, making sure that our communities have equitable education, that is a huge topic right now in North Carolina. These issues that impact our communities, early vote, you don't want to lose your opportunity to have your voice heard on those.
Yes.
And so early voting will allow you the flexibility to, one, vote on your time.
Yes.
Many counties have Sunday voting, weekend voting.
Yes.
November 2nd is that last Saturday is required for all 100 counties in the state. And so you can make a voting plan to vote on that last Saturday.
Yes.
Also, early voting allows you to do the same day registration that we talked about. And I think another thing that's really important is it shows that our lawmakers that we have the opportunity, and we want the flexible opportunities to vote.
And we need these flexible
because our lawmakers in Raleigh are trying to restrict early voting and take that away.
No.
And so the more that we are able to use it and come out and vote during those early voting hours, that will be literally data showing them that they are wrong.
Yeah. October 17th to November 2nd are the early voting days here in North Carolina. Every single county has an early voting location that's close to you. Check out the State Board of Elections website, or you can go to ncvoter.org, which is a trusted voter education website that has all the information you need to register to vote, use vote by mail, look up your ballot, look up your sample ballot. There's also a ballot builder on ncvoter.org where you can build your ballot and see all of those down races that we're talking about. And it's available in 7 different languages as well.
That's great.
And the hotline.
Always the hotline.
Yes.
And text the hotline.
Yes.
Like, literally, I have, my phone is in the other room, and we have been working on answering people's questions via text. I know sometimes, even myself, I do not want to talk to another person. I'm not in the time. But you might be like, I just heard about my sample ballot and it's going to be 3 pages long. What does that look like?
Yes.
Be prepared, because we do have really long ballots this election. I'm a registered voter in Orange County. My ballot is 3 pages.
3 pages.
3 pages, 3 columns. It's long.
Oh my gosh.
And so that is going to be some tedious work for myself, my partner, to figure out, what candidates align with our issues. And so making sure that, you can text me, text the hotline, 888-HOUR-VOTE. We can, immediately send you your sample ballot, so you can be prepared and make a voting plan with your friends, your partner, or help, people who, help people who might be displaced, get that information for them too.
Yeah, trusted, reliable, factual information. We all know that mis and disinformation. We have a great episode on that, so please check that out. But that is fueling so much crazy nonsense right now related to the disaster and the climate catastrophe. And so anything you can do to get trusted, reliable information out to your friends and your family and your community, that's what we're going to need to make it through. Because when we vote together, we win.
Yeah, we win, and we make movement. I think, it's so important to be thinking about, I do have an individual voice, but we know that when we are voting collectively or in an organized way, that causes revolutions. Thinking about Black political power and the importance of that and the history of that. And so when we really think about voting as a tool, along with many of the other things that we are doing, whether it's supporting mutual aid, whether it's showing up, at our elected officials, open meetings and speaking on behalf of our community. These are things that really make an impact, and we can see the difference at the end of the day.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Katelin, for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and be sure to check out ncvoter.org for any of your questions that you have about voting, making a voting plan, or how to register to vote, etc. in North Carolina. If you have any questions, call or text that hotline 888-OUR-VOTE. That's 888-687-8683. Once again,
I'm impressed that you had that down because I still, after 4 years, have not had that memorized. So
yeah, so 888-OUR-VOTE. And you can also check out the State Board of Elections website, ncsbe.gov/Helene, and they've got all of their most up-to-date information about Hurricane Helene and its impact in our elections happening across North Carolina, but particularly in the West. Thank you so much for joining us, and stay tuned. Check out our page for more episodes, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
bye.